So in this video I'm just going to go through the alternative instrumentation setup that I would need to cover off the vast majority of the tests that a Megger MTR105 can carry out. So on the left here we have the MTR105 package, and on the right there I have the stack of instrumentation that I would need to cover off all of the tests that the MTR105 can do. So I'll drag them out of their cases now, and then we'll take a look at the setup that would be needed. So there they are, all laid out on the table there. The MTR105 here. My first function to cover off would be the voltage function and frequency. The sonal here can do single phase voltage measurements, AC and DC, but it can't do three phase, which would be the three phase measurement there that's available on the MTR105. I can use the Unity UT233 for that measurement, and obviously that gives me the advantage of being able to read current and power and phase angle, which the MTR cannot do. However, the Unity cannot give me phase rotation, which this instrument can do. So to cover that off I would need a motor and supply phase rotation meter, which is the Fluke 9062 that I've got here. So that would cover off the voltage and also the motor phase rotation. Move around onto insulation tests. That would be the primary job for the sonal MIC30 there. That has the 50 to 1000 volts insulation testing. It also has a variable voltage function, which is the same as the MTR105. On top of that, the unit does have the guard terminal available for it to carry out that test that the MTR105 also does, and it can save the same data as the MTR105, just whereas this you give the memory slot a name. With the sonal you just have a number for the memory slot and you just keep incrementing that memory slot as you save data, whereas this is a little bit more finesse to the MTR105, the way it saves the data to a named slot. Moving around to this function here, I've got resistance. The sonal also over here can do continuity, same as the MTR105. It also does a 200 milliamp test, but if I remember correctly, this doesn't have a bidirectional test that this one does. Moving around, 4-wire resistance. To utilise 4-wire resistance, I would actually move to the RS Pro 5302 sitting over there. That's primarily because it can give me a 200 milliamp test current for a 4-wire resistance test, which is the same as this unit. The LCR meter there can't do 200 milliamp test, so although it can do 4-wire resistance, it's at a much lower current. So to match the test spec better, I would use the RS Pro unit there. Moving around, we've covered off the motor phase rotation with the Fluke, so we move round to the LCR function on here, primarily capacitance and inductance. For that I would need an LCR meter, which I've got the Voltcraft LCR 300 sitting there. I'm pretty sure from memory, yeah, this doesn't cover capacitance, so it would have to be the LCR meter there. And obviously you can do the inductance the same as the MTR105. Finally, temperature function measurement. When I piled all these instruments together, I realised that in actual fact none of them can measure temperature, so I've had to move to a secondary unit, which is the Fluke 971 here. That's the standard unit that I use for recording temperature during a lot of my tests. This will give me the humidity as well as the temperature, which the MTR105 can't do. If you go back to some of the review videos that I've done of individual functions, this temperature function can be used in combination with the insulation test function to get a temperature compensated result, which obviously I can't do with all of this equipment. I can record the raw data needed through the Fluke here and sonal, and then I'd have to do a manual calculation. So that's pretty much all the instrumentation there that you would need to cover off the vast majority of the testing on the MTR105. A couple of benefits from this kind of a setup. This kind of a setup would be cheaper overall, and you could probably get it even cheaper by using cheaper units here. These Flukes are quite expensive, If you didn't need a guard test on an insulation tester, there are cheaper insulation testers out there that you could use, so you could cut costs again a little bit that way. Guard terminal on LV is quite unusual, so if you wanted that guard terminal, you are looking at a unit very similar in cost to that. So the couple of disadvantages with this kind of a test setup: obviously the number of instrumentation you're carrying around, all the cases, the leads. Some of this you can probably mix them together. I could probably get these two into the Sonal case, because that's quite a roomy case with that one in there, and I could use the leads from the Uni-T for the Fluke 3-phase, or vice versa, so you could get rid of a set of leads there. Likewise, you could get rid of a set of leads between the LCR and the 4-wire resistance from the RS Pro. But on top of that, when you're actually testing something out, if you want to use this kind of a setup, you are continually swapping instruments around, whereas the benefit of using the MTR105 is that you can leave the leads plugged in and just swap connections on whatever you're testing, and there's less swapping around of leads, so you get more efficient with your testing process using the MTR105 than you do with the multi-instrument setup there. So it's just a case of what you desire from your testing process, I guess. I'm quite happy with the MTR105. I think it offers quite a bit of advantages. Some of the negatives of this can be sorted out by Megger, and it becomes an even more attractive instrument in my opinion. But each of us has to make our own decision as to what we want from our testing process. Okay, so that's it from this video. I hope you found it useful and enjoyable. If you did, please give it a like, and I'll see you again in the next video.